A store manager dragged a shy black clerk to the bathroom, unaware that a billionaire CEO was standing just a few feet away. She was quiet, gentle, and never fought back, just trying to do her job and get through another hard day. But when that cruel moment of humiliation played out in front of customers, someone was watching. Someone powerful, someone she'd never met. The next second, everything changed. He wasn't just any man, he was the secret owner of the entire company. And what he saw broke something inside him. But as the world finds out what really happened, her life spins out of control. Fame, lies, and a truth no one expected begin to unfold. Because sometimes the people who hurt you the most aren't the ones who destroy you. It's the ones who try to help. When kindness turns into chaos and justice becomes a storm, can a woman humiliated in front of the world find the faith to forgive? Or will the truth tear everything apart? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now. And if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The summer heat pressed against the glass doors of Bargain Town like a heavy blanket. Ivor Johnson paused for a moment, her fingers resting on the door handle, and closed her eyes. "Lord, give me strength for another day," she whispered, the words as familiar as her own heartbeat. The cool rush of air conditioning greeted her as she stepped inside. Her feet already ached from the 45-minute bus ride, but she straightened her navy blue store vest and managed a gentle smile. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a harsh glow on the recently mopped floors. 6 years. She'd walked through these same doors for 6 years, watching the seasons change through the storefront windows, helping countless customers find everything from baby clothes to kitchen supplies. The work wasn't glamorous, but it helped keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. Her thoughts drifted to Malik as she made her way to the time clock. Her 15-year-old son had been sound asleep when she left their small 2-room apartment this morning. He'd stayed up late working on his science project, something about renewable energy that made his eyes light up whenever he talked about it. The memory of his enthusiasm warmed her heart. Their apartment might be cramped, with its worn carpet and temperamental heating system, but they'd made it home. Photos of Malik's father lined the walls, snapshots of happier times before cancer had taken him 5 years ago. The rent ate up most of her paycheck, but it was in a decent school district, and that's what mattered most. "Morning, Mrs. Johnson," called out Jenny from the clothing department. The teenage part-timer always had a smile for everyone. "Good morning, sweetheart," Ava replied, her voice soft but warm. She clocked in and headed to her station at the front registers. As the morning progressed, the store began to fill with customers. Ava moved efficiently between transactions, offering genuine smiles and kind words to each person who came through her line. "Would you like help out with these bags, Mom?" she asked an elderly woman struggling with her purchases. "Those cans look heavy." The woman's face brightened. "Oh, bless you, dear. My arthritis is acting up something fierce today." Ava carefully helped the woman load her cart, taking extra care with the canned goods. It wasn't technically part of her job description, but she couldn't stand to see anyone struggle when she could help. The peaceful morning rhythm shattered when Todd Grayson's voice cut through the air like a whip. "Who left these boxes in the middle of the aisle?" he demanded, his face flushed with anger. "This is a lawsuit waiting to happen." Ava's shoulders tensed. The store manager stood in the center of the main aisle, pointing at a stack of empty boxes that the stock crew hadn't yet collected. His tie was slightly askew, and his thinning hair seemed to bristle with irritation. "Sorry, Mr. Grayson," mumbled one of the stock boys, hurrying to gather the boxes. "We were just about to isn't good enough!" Todd snapped. "This is exactly the kind of laziness I'm talking about." The boy's face reddened as customers turned to stare. Ava's heart ached for him. But she kept her head down, focusing on scanning items and making change. She'd learned long ago that drawing Todd's attention rarely ended well. As the morning wore on, the store grew more crowded. The air felt thick with humidity despite the air conditioning, and tempers seemed to match the weather. Ova maintained her calm, helping where she could, offering smiles to frustrated customers and assistance to harried co-workers. During her brief break, she pulled out her phone to check on Malik. "Hope you got to school okay, baby. Don't forget your lunch money is in the blue envelope. Love you." She typed the text with careful fingers, still not entirely comfortable with the smartphone Malik had insisted on teaching her to use. Back on the floor, Ava noticed a display of summer sandals that needed straightening. As she bent to adjust the boxes, her elbow caught the edge of a small shelf holding flip-flops. Time seemed to slow as the display tipped, sending dozens of plastic sandals cascading onto the floor. The crash wasn't particularly loud, but to Ava, it might as well have been thunder. Her heart dropped as she heard familiar footsteps approaching rapidly. "What is this mess?" Todd's voice carried across the store. "Johnson, what did you do?" Ava's cheeks burned as she knelt to gather the scattered footwear. "I'm sorry, Mr. Grayson. It was an accident. I'll have it cleaned up right away." "An accident?" Todd loomed over her, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Just like the pricing mistakes last week were an accident? Or the mixed-up inventory counts?" Ava started, but Todd cut her off. You know how useless you are!" He spat. "Can't even stack shoes without making a mess. Maybe if you spent less time chatting with customers and more time doing your actual job." Ava kept her eyes down, her hands trembling slightly as she continued picking up the sandals. She could feel the stares of customers and co-workers alike, could hear the whispers and uncomfortable shuffling of feet. "Look at me when I'm talking to you," Todd demanded. Slowly, Ava raised her head, meeting his angry gaze with quiet dignity. She wouldn't cry. Not here. Not now. She thought of Malik, of the lessons she'd taught him about maintaining his dignity no matter what. The memory helped her keep her composure. From the corner of her eye, she noticed movement. A man in a baseball cap near the shoe aisle had stopped browsing. His head snapped up at Todd's latest outburst, and though she couldn't make out his features clearly, something in his expression made her pause. He stood completely still, watching the scene unfold with an intensity that seemed out of place for a casual shopper. The moment stretched out, heavy with tension. Ava's fingers closed around another sandal, the plastic warm from the floor. She could hear her own heartbeat, feel the weight of dozens of eyes on her. But she wouldn't break. She wouldn't give Todd the satisfaction of seeing her crumble. "Just clean it up," Todd finally growled, turning on his heel. "And try not to destroy anything else today, if you can manage that." As he stormed away, Ava released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Her hands were steady now as she continued her task, deliberately positioning each pair of sandals back on the display. She could feel the man in the baseball cap still watching, his presence like a question mark in her peripheral vision. The humidity outside seemed to press against the windows, but inside, the air conditioning hummed steadily on, indifferent to the human drama it witnessed. Ava straightened the last pair of flip-flops, adjusted her vest, and stood up. There were customers waiting at the registers. There was work to be done. And she would do it, as she always had, with grace and dignity intact. The quiet man in the baseball cap remained where he was, his expression unreadable as he watched her walk back to her register, head held high despite the morning's humiliation. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, marking another hour in another day at Bargain Town, while outside, the South Carolina sun climbed higher in the summer sky. The hours ticked by with painful slowness. Ava's hands moved mechanically across the register keys as she helped customer after customer. but her mind kept circling back to the morning's humiliation. The fluorescent lights seemed harsh, making her head ache as she tried to maintain her usual warm demeanor. "Thank you for shopping with us," she said softly to an elderly woman purchasing garden supplies. The customer patted her hand sympathetically, having witnessed the earlier incident. "Don't let him get to you, dear," the woman whispered. "Some people just don't have the Lord in their hearts." Iva managed a small smile, but her fingers trembled as she counted out the change. From across the store, she could feel Todd's eyes on her, watching, waiting for another mistake. The man in the baseball cap had been wandering the aisles all day, sometimes stopping to examine products, but always seeming to stay within sight of her register. The afternoon rush brought a steady stream of customers, and Ava's line grew longer. She worked as quickly as she could, but accuracy was important. She couldn't risk making a mistake with the drawer. "Johnson!" Todd's voice cut through the store's background noise. "Pick up the pace. We're not running a retirement home here." Heat crept up Ava's neck as several customers turned to stare. She tried to move faster, but her fingers felt clumsy now. A price tag wouldn't scan, and she had to manually enter it. Each second felt like an eternity as Todd stood nearby, tapping his foot impatiently. "I'm sorry for the wait," she murmured to the customers, who looked uncomfortable on her behalf. The afternoon wore into evening, and the store grew quieter. Ava's feet ached in her worn shoes, and her back protested from standing all day. She'd missed her afternoon break. Todd had said they were too busy, but she didn't dare complain. At 7:45 p.m., 15 minutes before closing, a customer approached the service desk with a frown. "Excuse me, but the ladies' restroom is out of paper towels." Todd, who had been reviewing the day's reports nearby, slammed his clipboard down. "Johnson!" he bellowed. "Didn't I tell you to check the restrooms during your shift?" Ava's heart raced. She had checked them hours ago, but they'd been busy since then. "Yes, sir, Incompetent!" Todd's face had turned an ugly shade of red. "First the display, now this? You can't handle the simplest tasks." Before Ava could respond, Todd's hand shot out, grabbing her upper arm. His fingers dug into her flesh as he yanked her away from the register. "Let me show you where we keep the supplies since you seem to have forgotten." Ava stumbled as he dragged her across the store. Customers stopped to stare, some with phones partially raised, others with mouths open in shock. Her co-workers stood frozen, horror evident on their faces, but no one moved to help. "Mr. Grayson, please," Ava whispered, trying to maintain her dignity even as tears threatened. "I can find it myself." "Clearly you can't." Todd's grip tightened as he pulled her toward the employee bathroom in the back. 6 years here, and you still can't handle basic responsibilities." Ava caught glimpses of faces as they passed. Concerned customers, frightened employees, and the man in the baseball cap, who had set down his shopping basket and was following at a measured pace. The shame of it all pressed down on Ava like a physical weight. She'd endured so much over the years, the loss of her husband, the struggles to raise Malik alone, the daily indignities of poverty. But this public humiliation threatened to break her carefully maintained composure. "I'm sorry," she whispered, though she knew she'd done nothing wrong. The words tasted bitter, but they were all she had. Todd yanked open the door to the employee bathroom, the fluorescent light flickering overhead. "Now, let me show you where—" "Take your hands off her." The quiet voice carried authority that cut through Todd's rage like a knife. Todd whirled around, still gripping Ava's arm. The man in the baseball cap stood in the hallway, his presence somehow filling the narrow space. With deliberate movements, he reached up and removed his cap. The color drained from Todd's face as recognition dawned. Daniel Cross, the billionaire founder and CEO of Bargaintown, stood before them, his expression as cold as steel. Todd's fingers went slack, releasing Ava's arm. She stumbled back slightly, rubbing the spot where his grip had left red marks on her dark skin. The silence in the hallway was absolute, broken only by the distant beeping of a register and the hum of the building's air conditioning. Daniel Cross's gaze moved from Todd's pale face to Ava's arm, where the marks of Todd's fingers were already beginning to bruise. His jaw tightened, and when he spoke again, his voice was carefully controlled but carried an underlying current of fury. "Mr. Grayson," he said, each word precise and measured, "I believe we need to have a conversation in your office. Now." The fluorescent light continued to flicker overhead, casting strange shadows on the linoleum floor. In that moment, the power dynamic had shifted completely, and everyone in that narrow hallway knew it. The air was thick with tension as they stood frozen in this tableau. The CEO, the manager, and the quiet worker whose dignity had finally found its defender. Todd's grip on Ava's arm went slack as he stared at Daniel Cross, his mouth opening and closing without sound. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, highlighting the beads of sweat forming on his forehead. "Mr. Cross, I can explain," Todd finally stammered, taking a step backward. "You see, we have certain standards here, and Mrs. Johnson—" "Standards?" Daniel's voice remained eerily calm, but his eyes had turned to steel. "Would those standards include physically assaulting your employees, Mr. Grayson?" Todd's face flushed red. "No, sir, I wasn't. I was just showing her. I've been in this store for 6 hours today." Daniel continued, his words measured and precise. "I've watched Mrs. Johnson handle difficult customers with grace. I've seen her help elderly shoppers reach high shelves. I've observed her comfort a crying child while simultaneously managing the register." The whispers had started now, spreading through the store like wildfire. Employees and customers gathered at the edges of the hallway, their phones forgotten as they watched the scene unfold. "But that's not all I've seen," Daniel went on, his calm demeanor making his words even more devastating. "I've watched you berate your staff, mock their efforts, and create an atmosphere of fear. Tell me, Mr. Grayson, is that what you consider leadership?" Todd's shoulders slumped. "Sir, the pressures of meeting quotas. Do those pressures justify humiliating a dedicated employee in front of customers?" Daniel's question hung in the air. "Do they excuse physical intimidation?" Ava stood quietly against the wall, tears sliding down her cheeks. She hadn't wanted this, any of this. The attention made her uncomfortable, but something inside her felt seen for the first time in years. Daniel turned to address the gathered crowd. "Effective immediately, Todd Grayson is no longer employed by Bargain Town." He gestured to a woman in a blazer who had appeared at his side. "Sarah from HR will escort him out. Mr. Grayson, please collect your personal belongings." The whispers grew louder. "That's really him, Daniel Cross." "The billionaire? Did you see how he stood up for Ava?" Todd seemed to shrink as Sarah approached him. "This way, Mr. Grayson," she said firmly. As Todd was led away, Daniel turned to Ava, his expression softening. "Mrs. Johnson, I owe you a profound apology on behalf of this company. Would you be willing to speak with me privately? The break room, perhaps?" Ava nodded, still trying to process everything that had happened. They walked to the break room in silence, followed by curious glances from staff and customers alike. The break room was empty, its harsh fluorescent lights illuminating the worn formica tables and humming vending machines. Daniel pulled out a chair for Ava, then got 2 cups of coffee from the vending machine. 3 sugars, right?" he asked, surprising her. "I noticed earlier when you were on your break." Ava accepted the coffee with trembling hands. "Yes, thank you." "Mrs. Johnson, may I call you Ava?" When she nodded, he continued, "I'd like to hear about your experience here, if you're willing to share." Something about his quiet attention made the words come easier. Ava found herself telling him about her 6 years at the store, about the regular customers who had become like family, about the co-workers who looked out for each other. My husband James used to say retail work was like being on stage. She said softly, "You have to keep smiling even when your feet hurt and your heart's breaking." She paused, twisting her wedding ring. "He passed away 3 years ago. Cancer. It was quick." Daniel listened intently, his coffee forgotten. "And you've been raising your son alone since then?" Ava's face softened at the mention of Malik. "Yes, my boy. He's 15 now, so smart and kind. He wants to be an engineer." She smiled despite her tears. "He works so hard at school, takes extra math classes. Sometimes I find him still, studying at 2 in the morning. That must be difficult, managing everything on your own." "God provides," Ava said simply. "We might not have much, but we have enough. Malik helps with chores, and I pick up extra shifts when I can." Daniel's expression was thoughtful. "And yet, after everything that happened today, you haven't said one unkind word about Mr. Grayson." Ava looked down at her coffee. "People act ugly when they're hurting," she said quietly. "Mr. Grayson, I've seen him get phone calls that leave him upset. Pictures on his desk of little girls, his daughters, I think. But they never visit. Sometimes the people who hurt others are hurting worst of all." Daniel sat back, studying her with newfound respect. The clock on the wall showed 9:15 p.m., well past closing time. "It's late," he noted. "How do you usually get home?" "The bus, but the last one left at 9. Ava sighed. "I'll call my son, see if our neighbor can drive him to pick me up." "Please, let me give you a ride home," Daniel offered. "It's the least I can do after everything that's happened today." Ava hesitated, but exhaustion won out. "That's very kind of you, thank you." The break room's fluorescent lights hummed above them, casting soft shadows as they sat in comfortable silence, finishing their coffee. The events of the day felt almost surreal now, like a dream slowly fading into something new and uncertain. Daniel's black SUV purred quietly through the humid night air of Somerville. The interior smelled of rich leather and a faint hint of pine, worlds away from the crowded city buses Ava usually rode. She sat stiffly, her hands folded in her lap, hyper-aware of the pristine condition of everything around her. The driver, a middle-aged man in a crisp uniform, maintained a respectful silence as he navigated the streets. Ava caught herself fidgeting with her seatbelt for the 3rd time and forced her hands still. "I hope you're comfortable," Daniel said, breaking the silence. His voice was gentle, trying to ease the tension. "Yes, thank you," Ava replied, smoothing her work uniform. "I'm just not used to such luxury." Daniel smiled, the streetlights casting intermittent shadows across his face. "My wife Sarah used to say I was too fond of fancy things. She preferred simple pleasures, gardening, reading on the porch, making bread from scratch." The mention of his wife softened something in the air between them. Ava turned slightly toward him. "Used to? She passed away 5 years ago. Cancer." His voice held old pain, carefully contained. "I'm so sorry," Ava said softly. "It's not an easy road, is it? Losing someone you love?" Daniel shook his head. "No, it's not. Some days are harder than others." He paused, then asked, "You mentioned your son wants to be an engineer." Ava's face brightened immediately. "Yes, Malik's brilliant with numbers. He's teaching himself computer programming now, too. The library lets him use their computers after school. That's impressive dedication for a 15-year-old. He gets that from his father," Ava said proudly. "James always said education was the key to everything. We're saving up for college, little by little." "Does Malik have a specific field of engineering in mind?" "Mechanical engineering. He's fascinated by robotics. Ava smiled, remembering. When he was little, my mama used to sing him this old hymn about God's hands creating the world. Malik would say he wanted to create things too, just like that. Your mother sounds like a wise woman. She was? Ava's voice softened. She raised me on hymns and hope. Amazing Grace was her favorite. She'd sing it while cooking, cleaning, anything really. The SUV turned onto a quieter street, lined with modest apartment buildings. Daniel noticed how Ava straightened slightly, recognizing her neighborhood. Mr. Cross, she said suddenly, her voice earnest. I need to thank you properly. What you did today, you didn't have to step in, but you did. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Sometimes doing nothing is the cruelest thing. He replied, I've learned that lesson the hard way. The car pulled up to a small apartment complex, its brick facade worn but well-maintained. A teenage boy sat on the front steps, jumping to his feet as the unfamiliar vehicle approached. Even in the dim light, Daniel could see James in the boy's features, the same quiet dignity Ava had mentioned. That's Malik, Ava said, unnecessary but proud. They stepped out of the car, Malik approaching cautiously. His expression was a mixture of confusion and protective concern as he looked between his mother and the well-dressed stranger. Baby, this is Mr. Daniel Cross, Ivor explained. He's the CEO of Bargaintown. He gave me a ride home because I missed my bus. Daniel extended his hand. It's nice to meet you, Malik. Your mother speaks very highly of you. Malik's handshake was firm, his gaze direct. Thank you for bringing my mom home safely, sir. Would you like to come in for a cup of tea? Ivor offered, the southern hospitality ingrained in her, winning out over any hesitation. It's the least I can do. Daniel glanced at his watch, then nodded. I'd like that, thank you. He turned to his driver. James, I'll call when I'm ready. The apartment was on the second floor, reached by an outdoor stairway. Inside, the space was small but immaculate. Worn but clean furniture filled the living room, and family photos lined the walls. A small desk in the corner held textbooks and a notebook filled with what looked like mathematical equations. The kitchen was tiny but organized, every surface gleaming. Ava moved efficiently, putting on the kettle and pulling out mugs. Malik helped automatically, getting the tea bags and sugar. Please, sit down. Ivor gestured to the small kitchen table. Daniel sat, noticing the careful mending on the tablecloth, the way everything in the apartment spoke of pride despite limited means. A cross hung on the wall, and beneath it, a framed photo of a younger Ava with a tall, handsome man. James, he assumed. The kettle whistled, and soon they all sat with steaming mugs of tea. Malik kept glancing between his mother and Daniel, clearly trying to piece together the day's events. Mrs. Johnson. Ava. Daniel began, wrapping his hands around the warm mug. I have something I'd like to discuss with you. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Given today's events, we'll need to review the store's operations thoroughly. In the meantime, I'd like you to take over as acting store manager. Ivor's eyes widened. Mr. Cross, You have 6 years of experience, excellent customer service skills, and more importantly, you understand what leadership should look like. He smiled slightly. The exact opposite of what we saw today. Malik sat up straighter, pride and concern warring on his face. Mom, that's amazing! Ivor set her tea down carefully. It's a big responsibility. One you're more than capable of handling. Daniel assured her. We'll provide all the training and support you need. They discussed the details over tea. Hours, responsibilities, the temporary nature of the position until a full review could be completed. Finally, Daniel stood to leave, thanking them for their hospitality. At the door, Ava thanked him again, her voice quiet but steady. Malik shook his hand once more, this time with a small smile. From the second-floor landing, Ava watched the black SUV disappear into the night, its taillights growing smaller until they vanished completely. She stood there long after the car was gone, her hands clasped together, wondering if this unexpected turn of events was a blessing or a burden. The weight of responsibility settled on her shoulders, heavy but not entirely unwelcome. The alarm clock's gentle chime pulled Ava from her sleep at 5:30 in the morning. She reached for her phone to silence it, but paused when she saw the screen. 47 text messages, 23 missed calls, over 100 social media notifications. Her heart skipped a beat. Something was wrong. The first message was from Jenny, a cashier at the store. "OMG Ava, have you seen this? You're all over Twitter." With trembling fingers, Ava opened the link. A video started playing, shaky footage taken from behind a shelf. There she was, and Todd, his face red with anger as he grabbed her arm. The quiet dignity in her posture made her throat tight. Then came Daniel Cross, removing his cap, his voice calm but steel-edged as he confronted Todd. "Oh, Lord," Ava whispered, sinking onto the edge of her bed. More messages poured in, some from people she hadn't spoken to in years, others from complete strangers. The hashtag #CallJusticeForAva was trending, with thousands of people sharing their own stories of workplace harassment. Malik appeared in her doorway, already dressed for school. "Mum, you okay?" "Someone recorded what happened yesterday," she explained, her voice shaky. It's everywhere." Malik sat beside her, looking at her phone. His jaw tightened as he watched the video. "They had no right to film you without permission." "I know, baby." Ava patted his hand. "But what's done is done." The morning passed in a blur. Ava made breakfast as usual, but her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Local news stations called, asking for interviews. Online journalists sent emails. Even a national morning show reached out through Bargain Town's corporate office. By 10 o'clock, the first flower delivery arrived, a huge bouquet of yellow roses from someone she'd never met. The card read, "Stay strong, you're an inspiration." At 11, another delivery, then another. "Mom," Malik called from the living room. "You're on TV." Sure enough, the local news was running the story. They showed clips from the viral video, interviews with workplace harassment experts, and statements from Bargain Town's corporate office. Ava's photo, taken from her social media, filled the screen. Her phone rang. Daniel Cross. "Ava." His voice was concerned. "I've got our PR team handling this. You don't have to respond to anyone or give any statements. We're releasing an official company response about our zero-tolerance policy for harassment." "Thank you, Mr. Cross." Ava's voice trembled slightly. "I never wanted any of this attention." "I know." He paused. "How are you holding up?" She searched for words. "I feel exposed. Like everyone's looking at me, judging me. Some people are calling me a hero, but others—" She trailed off, thinking of the cruel comments she'd seen. "Don't read the comments," Daniel advised gently. "We have your back, Ava. Take today off if you need to." But staying home meant watching more news coverage, fielding more calls. By noon, co-workers started showing up at her door. Some were genuinely supportive, bringing food and offering hugs. Others barely hid their envy, making comments about her 15 minutes of fame. Sarah from electronics kept saying, "You're so lucky. This could really take you places." Lucky wasn't how Ava felt. Malik came home early from school, worried about her. He found her sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by flower arrangements, her phone still buzzing. "Maybe we should turn it off," he suggested. "I can't." Ava sighed. "What if Mr. Cross needs to reach me, or the store?" Through the window, she spotted the first news van parking across the street. Then another pulled up behind it. "This is crazy," Malik muttered, peeking through the curtains. "They can't just camp out here, can they?" "They're on public property," Ava said wearily. "They can stay as long as they want." More messages poured in. People shared the video with captions like, "Watch brave woman stands up to abusive boss," and "Billionaire CEO goes undercover, fires racist manager." The story kept growing, twisting, taking on meanings Ava never intended. Some comments were kind. "She showed such grace under pressure." Others were hateful, questioning her motives or attacking her character. By evening, the parking lot was full of news vans. Reporters knocked on her door. Neighbors called, complaining about the media circus. The property manager left a message about maintaining peace and order in the complex. Ava retreated to her bedroom, closing the door. She knelt beside her bed, clasping her hands together. "Lord," she whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I didn't ask for any of this. I just wanted to do my job, take care of my son, live my quiet life. Please, please give me strength. Give me peace. Help me find my way through this storm." Her phone buzzed again on the nightstand. Another call, another message, another stranger wanting a piece of her story. Through the window, camera lights illuminated the parking lot like artificial stars. Ava stood, watching the scene below. Reporters checked their makeup in car mirrors. Cameramen adjusted their equipment, all of them waiting, hungry for her words, her tears, her truth. The phone buzzed again in her hand, its screen bright with notifications. Her private world had become a public spectacle, and she didn't know how to make it stop. In the living room, she could hear Malik talking quietly on his own phone, probably to his best friend Marcus. He was trying to sound brave, but she heard the worry in his voice. Her son shouldn't have to protect her from this. It wasn't fair to either of them. Another buzz, another notification, another reminder that her life had changed in ways she never expected. The lights from the news vans cast long shadows on her bedroom wall, and Ava watched them dance, feeling more alone than ever in the midst of all this attention. 3 days had passed since the video went viral, but the media storm showed no signs of calming. Ava sat in the break room of Bargain Town, trying to eat her lunch while avoiding the stares of her co-workers. Her phone lay face down on the table. She'd stopped checking it after the first 1,000 notifications. The television mounted in the corner caught her attention as the Bargain Town logo flashed across the screen. Patricia Chen, the company's chief communications officer, stood at a podium addressing reporters. "Bargain Town stands firmly with Ava Johnson and all our employees who deserve a safe, respectful workplace," Patricia announced. "Today, we're implementing comprehensive reforms to prevent workplace harassment and discrimination. These include mandatory sensitivity training, an anonymous reporting system, and a zero-tolerance policy for abusive behavior." Ava's co-workers gathered around the television, some casting glances her way. She focused on her sandwich, wishing she could disappear. "Did you know about this?" Sarah from electronics whispered, sliding into the seat next to her. "No," Ava replied softly. "I found out the same time you did." The break room door opened, and conversations stopped, mid-sentence. Daniel Cross walked in, this time dressed in a perfectly tailored navy suit rather than the baseball cap and casual clothes from his undercover visit. Despite his formal attire, his expression remained gentle and approachable. "Good afternoon, everyone," he said, nodding to the room. Some employees mumbled greetings, others stared in stunned silence. "Would you mind if I spoke with Ava for a moment?" Chairs scraped against the floor as people hurried to give them privacy. Ava remained seated, her hands folded in her lap. "How are you holding up?" Daniel asked, taking the chair across from her. I'm managing, she answered honestly. The reporters finally left my apartment complex yesterday. That's something. Daniel's face darkened with concern. I'm sorry about that. We should have provided security. It's okay. My neighbors actually formed a little protective circle. Mrs. Rodriguez from upstairs told the reporters she'd turn her sprinklers on them if they didn't leave. A small smile crossed Ava's face at the memory. Community support. That's wonderful. Daniel paused, studying her. But you're still uncomfortable with all this attention, aren't you? Ava nodded. Everyone keeps calling me brave and strong. They act like I did something special, but I didn't. I just existed. I just tried to handle things with grace because that's what my mama taught me. That's exactly why I'm here, Daniel said, leaning forward slightly. Ava, we're developing a new employee respect training initiative. Not just the standard corporate videos and PowerPoints. Something real. Something that actually changes how people treat each other. He pulled out a folder and placed it on the table. I'd like you to help design it. Ava's eyes widened. Me? But I'm not... I don't have any experience with that kind of thing. You have the most important kind of experience. Daniel countered gently. You live it. Every day I've watched how you treat people, customers, co-workers, everyone. You show respect not because a manual told you to, but because it's who you are. Iva's hands twisted in her lap. I don't know. The way you handled everything with Todd, that wasn't just patience. It was wisdom. Even now, you've never spoken ill of him. Instead, you tried to understand why he acted that way. Daniel's voice grew softer. You already teach these principles every day. By how you live. Tears pricked at Ava's eyes. She thought of her mother's words from years ago. Baby, your kindness isn't weakness. It's strength wearing its Sunday best. What would this involve? She asked hesitantly. Working with our training team to develop scenarios, reviewing materials, sharing your perspectives. We'd value your input on making this meaningful rather than just another corporate requirement. He smiled. And yes, it comes with appropriate compensation for your time. Ava took a deep breath. The idea of stepping into such a role terrified her, but something else stirred in her heart. A quiet hope that maybe her experiences could help prevent someone else from going through similar treatment. Would I still keep my store duties? Of course, we can schedule around them. This would be additional, not replacing your current role. Daniel watched her carefully. What do you think? Ava closed her eyes briefly, saying a silent prayer for guidance. When she opened them, her voice was soft but steady. Yes, she said. I'll help. Daniel's smile widened. Thank you, Ava. Your insights will be invaluable. As he stood to leave, Ava felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. Not quite confidence yet, but its tender beginning. Like a flower pushing through concrete, fragile but determined to grow. The break room slowly filled again after Daniel left. Her co-workers kept stealing glances at her, some with admiration, others with curiosity. But for the first time in days, their attention didn't make her want to hide. Instead, she straightened her shoulders slightly, remembering her mother's words about strength and kindness. Maybe this was why God had allowed all this to happen. Not to make her a hero, but to make her a helper. Her phone buzzed again on the table, but this time, instead of ignoring it, she picked it up. It was a text from Malik. Proud of you, Mum. Always have been. Ava smiled, her confidence trembling but blooming, like the first rays of sun after a storm. The morning sun filtered through the Bargaintown break room windows, casting warm squares of light across the table, where Ava and Daniel sat sharing lunch. It had become their routine over the past few days, Daniel bringing sandwiches from the local deli, Ava contributing her homemade sweet tea. "My grandmother's recipe," she explained, pouring him another glass. "She always said sweet tea was God's way of making Georgia summers bearable." Daniel smiled, taking a sip. She was a wise woman. This is perfect. They had spent the morning reviewing training scenarios, but their conversations always drifted deeper. Today, Daniel seemed troubled by something. "Can I ask you something personal, Ava?" he said, setting down his sandwich. "How do you do it? Forgive so easily?" Ava thought carefully before answering. "It's not easy, but holding on to hurt only makes your own heart heavy. When I think about Todd, I try to remember he's someone's son, maybe someone's father. Something made him that angry, that scared." "Scared?" Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Most meanness comes from fear," she said softly. "Fear of not being good enough, of losing control. My mama used to say, hurt people, but healed people heal people." Daniel absorbed this, his expression thoughtful. "Your mother sounds like she had great wisdom." She did. Everything I know about faith and forgiveness, I learned from watching her live it. Over the next few days, their lunch discussions continued. Daniel opened up about losing his wife to cancer 5 years ago, how success felt hollow without someone to share it with. Ava spoke about her late husband, about raising Malik alone, about choosing joy even when life felt heavy. One afternoon, Malik stopped by the store after school. He found Daniel and Ava reviewing training materials, and Daniel immediately brightened. "Malik, how's that engineering project coming along?" The teenager's face lit up. He pulled out his phone, showing Daniel the robot he was building for the science fair. Daniel listened intently, asking technical questions that made Malik stand straighter with pride. "You know," Daniel said, "I studied engineering before I went into business. If you'd like, I could show you some of the basics of mechanical design." Malik's eyes widened. "Really? That would be amazing." Ava watched them bent over Malik's notebook, Daniel sketching diagrams and explaining concepts. Her heart swelled, seeing her son so engaged, so respected. It had been a long time since he'd had a male mentor figure in his life. Later that evening, as they walked home, Malik couldn't stop talking about Daniel. "Mom, he's so smart, and he doesn't talk down to me like most adults do. He actually listens." Ava smiled. "He's a good man. God puts people in our path for a reason." "Yeah," Malik agreed quietly. "I like how he treats you too, Mom. With respect. Like you matter." His words touched something deep in Ava's heart. She was beginning to see herself differently through Daniel's eyes, not just as a worker, but as someone with valuable insights and strength. The weekend brought a new challenge. Ava's pastor had asked her to speak briefly at Sunday service about her experience. She'd initially refused, but Daniel encouraged her. "Your story could help others find courage," he'd said. "Sometimes the quietest voices carry the most power." So here she was, standing at the podium, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped her notes. The church was full, sunlight streaming through stained glass windows. In the back pew, unnoticed by most, sat Daniel in simple clothes, his presence supporting her silently. "I never wanted attention," Ava began, her voice soft but clear. "When that video went viral, I felt exposed, humiliated all over again. But God has a way of using our lowest moments to lift us higher than we ever thought possible." She shared how the incident had opened doors, not just for her career, but for creating change. How forgiveness had freed her to see purpose in pain. How God had sent angels in disguise, neighbors, co-workers, even a CEO in a baseball cap, to show her she wasn't alone. "Sometimes," she continued, her voice growing stronger, What feels like humiliation is really God's invitation, an invitation to trust Him more deeply, to let Him use our story to help others, to show that kindness isn't weakness, it's courage wearing its Sunday best. As she spoke these last words, the congregation rose spontaneously to their feet. Applause filled the sacred space, but Ava barely heard it. Her eyes found Daniel in the back, and he nodded slightly, his face full of quiet pride. In that moment, standing before her church family, Ava felt something shift inside her. The trembling in her voice steadied completely. She wasn't just a quiet worker anymore, or even just a survivor. She was a teacher, a leader, a voice for change. The applause continued, washing over her like a blessing. Through her tears, she saw Malik beaming from the front pew, and beyond him, Daniel standing respectfully with the congregation, his presence a reminder that God's grace often came disguised as ordinary moments transformed into extraordinary opportunities. Her final words rang out clear and strong. When we choose to trust God's plan, even our wounds become windows, letting His light shine through to guide others home. The standing ovation swelled, filling every corner of the church with its thunder. But Ava's heart was finally quiet, at peace with this new chapter God was writing through her life. The morning sun painted Atlanta's skyline in shades of gold as Ava Johnson sat in the green room of Channel 8's morning show studio. Her hands fidgeted with the hem of her new navy blue dress, a gift from the store's employee fund, though she'd tried to refuse it. 5 minutes, Mrs. Johnson, a young production assistant called cheerfully. Ava nodded, taking deep breaths like Daniel had suggested during their practice session last week. She could still hear his calm voice. Just be yourself. That's what people connect with, authenticity. The past 2 weeks had been a whirlwind. First came the call from Good Morning Atlanta, then Daniel's immediate support. The company will handle everything, he'd assured her. Travel, hotel, whatever you need. This is important, Ava. Your story could help change workplace culture across the country. Now, sitting under the bright studio lights across from host Sarah Bennett, Ava fought to keep her nervousness at bay. The cameras rolled, red lights blinking. With us today is Ava Johnson, Sarah began warmly, whose story of dignity in the face of workplace harassment has captured hearts nationwide. Ava, thank you for being here. Thank you for having me. Ava replied softly, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Your video has been viewed millions of times. How has this experience changed your life? Ava paused, choosing her words carefully. It's shown me that God can use anything, even our hardest moments, to create positive change. I never wanted attention or fame. I just tried to handle a difficult situation with grace. The interview flowed naturally from there. Ava spoke about workplace respect, about choosing kindness even when facing cruelty. When Sarah asked about Daniel Cross's intervention, Ava's eyes lit up with genuine gratitude. Mr. Cross showed me that leadership isn't about power, it's about responsibility, about protecting those who can't protect themselves. Back in her hotel room that evening, Ava's phone buzzed with messages from Malik. Mom, you were amazing. Everyone at school saw it. Even my teachers were talking about it. Her heart swelled with joy. Maybe some good would come from all this attention after all. But 3 days later, back home in Somerville, that joy began to crack. Mom! Malik called from the living room, his voice tight with anger. You need to see this. Ava walked over to find him staring at his laptop screen. The website Celebrity Whispers blazed across the top, followed by photos, dozens of them. Daniel visiting the store. Daniel and Ava talking in the break room. Daniel's car outside her apartment complex that first night. The headline made her stomach drop. Billionaire CEO and employee. Secret romance behind viral video? They're twisting everything. Malik spat, scrolling through comments that made Ava's cheeks burn with shame. Some suggested she'd planned the incident for attention. Others implied worse things about her relationship with Daniel. "Don't read those, baby," she said softly, touching his shoulder. But her own eyes caught cruel words. Gold digger, attention seeker, playing the victim. Her phone buzzed, Daniel calling. She let it go to voicemail, needing time to process. How had something so pure become so twisted? That night, after Malik went to bed, Ava sat in her small kitchen, a cup of tea growing cold beside her. Her phone kept lighting up with notifications, more stories, more comments, more speculation. Each buzz felt like another small wound. She opened her social media accounts, seeing messages from strangers flooding in. Some were supportive, but many were filled with judgment and assumptions. The weight of it all pressed down on her chest. "Lord," she whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks, "why can't goodness just stay pure?" The question hung in the quiet kitchen. After a long moment, Ava picked up her phone and began systematically deleting her social media accounts. Facebook, gone. Twitter, deleted. Instagram, erased. With each deletion, she felt a small weight lift. Finally, in the darkness of her kitchen, she bowed her head. "Lord, give me strength," she prayed softly. "Not to fight back or prove myself, but to stay true to the path you've set before me. Help me remember that your opinion is the only one that matters." Her phone buzzed one final time, a text from Daniel. "Don't let them dim your light, Ava. Truth always rises above lies." She smiled faintly, grateful for his support, but knowing she needed to step back from the spotlight. The world might twist her story, but they couldn't twist her heart. Not as long as she kept it focused on what truly mattered. Setting her phone aside, Ava wrapped her hands around her cooling tea, letting the quiet of the night wash over her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, she found peace in stepping away from the noise, trusting God to guide her through this unexpected chapter of her life. The kitchen clock ticked softly in the darkness as Ava sat, her heart heavy, but her spirit determined. She might not be able to control what others said about her, but she could control how she responded. And right now, that meant choosing peace over popularity, truth over trending topics, and faith over fame. The rumors spread like wildfire through social media, news outlets, and tabloids. What had started as whispers grew into headlines that screamed across screens and newspapers. "Bargain Town CEO's secret romance with employee, and workplace incident or calculated publicity." In the pristine conference room on the 48th floor of Bargain Town's corporate headquarters, Harold Dent stood at the window, his reflection stern against the cityscape below. The board member turned to face Daniel Cross, who sat quietly at the head of the massive oak table. "The stock has dropped 3 points since these rumors started, Daniel," Harold said, his voice carrying the weight of corporate concern. "We need to address this immediately." Daniel ran his hand through his hair, exhaustion evident in the shadows under his eyes. "There's nothing to address. The rumors are completely false." "Truth isn't the issue here," Harold replied, laying several tabloid printouts on the table. "It's perception. The company's image is at stake." Other board members nodded in agreement. They'd called this emergency meeting to discuss what they termed a public relations crisis. "We need you to distance yourself from her," Harold continued. "Issue a statement that puts this to rest. Make it clear that your relationship with Ms. Johnson is purely professional." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Ava has done nothing wrong. She's a victim of circumstance, and now you want me to abandon her?" "Not abandon," Harold corrected smoothly. "Simply clarify. The statement can be respectful while establishing clear boundaries. The pressure mounted as other board members voiced their concerns. Stock prices, shareholder confidence, corporate image. The words swirled around Daniel like circling vultures. Finally, against every instinct that told him to stand firm, Daniel agreed to issue a statement. The words felt like ash in his mouth as the PR team crafted the carefully neutral message. Ms. Johnson and I are colleagues collaborating on corporate integrity initiatives. Bargaintown remains committed to workplace respect and professional boundaries. The statement went out that afternoon. Daniel couldn't bring himself to warn Ava beforehand. How could he explain this betrayal of their friendship? Across town, Ava saw the statement on her phone while preparing dinner. The words colleagues and professional boundaries stung like a slap. But even as tears pricked at her eyes, she understood. Daniel had a company to run, thousands of employees depending on him. She couldn't blame him for protecting that. "Mom?" Malik's voice was quiet as he entered the kitchen. "Can I stay home tomorrow?" Ava turned, noting the slump in her son's shoulders. "What's wrong, baby?" "Some kids." He hesitated, studying the floor. "They're saying stuff. About you and Mr. Cross, calling you names, saying you're just after his money." The wooden spoon in Ava's hand trembled. She'd endured the gossip, the sideways glances, the whispers. But seeing her son suffer because of it, this was too much. "Come here," she whispered, pulling him into a hug. At 15, he was already taller than her, but in that moment he felt like her little boy again. "I'm so sorry you're going through this." That night, after Malik went to bed, Ava sat at her small kitchen table and composed a text to Daniel. "Can we meet tomorrow? Somewhere quiet?" His response came quickly. "The pond at Riverside Park, 6 o'clock?" The next evening, Ava walked slowly along the park path as the sun began its descent. The pond stretched before her, its surface painted orange and pink by the dying light. Daniel was already there, sitting on a weathered wooden bench. He stood as she approached, his face etched with concern. "Ava, about the statement." She held up a hand, stopping him. "I understand why you had to do it. That's not why I asked to meet." They sat together on the bench, watching a family of ducks glide across the water. The distance between them felt vast, though their shoulders nearly touched. "I'm resigning," Ava said quietly. Daniel turned sharply. "What? No, Ava, you can't." "I have to," she interrupted gently. "This attention, these rumors, they're hurting everyone. My son is being bullied at school. Your company is suffering. It needs to stop." "You've done nothing wrong," Daniel protested, his voice rising with emotion. "We can fight this. I'll make another statement, a stronger one." Ava shook her head, a sad smile touching her lips. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't standing and fighting. Sometimes it's knowing when to step away. "Please!" Daniel's voice cracked. "Don't let them win like this." "They're not winning," she said softly. "I'm choosing peace. For my son. For myself. For you." She stood, adjusting her purse strap on her shoulder. The setting sun cast long shadows across the grass, stretching toward the darkening trees. "Ava, wait!" Daniel called, his voice breaking with desperation. But she kept walking, each step measured and deliberate. Tears slid down her cheeks as Daniel called her name again, the sound echoing across the quiet park. Still, she didn't turn back. The ducks continued their peaceful glide across the pond, unaware of the hearts breaking on its shore. As Ava's figure disappeared into the gathering dusk, Daniel remained on the bench, watching the space where she had been, feeling the weight of corporate expectations and public perception that had forced this gentle soul to retreat from the very spotlight that should have celebrated her. Courage. The morning light filtered through thin curtains, casting gentle shadows across Ava's small living room. 7 days had passed since she'd walked away from Bargaintown, but the emptiness still felt fresh. Her usual morning routine, the early bus ride, greeting the maintenance staff, organizing displays, now existed only in memory. She sat at her kitchen table, coffee growing cold beside her as she scrolled through job listings on her old laptop. The screen flickered, another reminder of all the things she couldn't afford to replace. Her fingers paused over an email from the Somerville Women's Shelter. They needed part-time help, mainly administrative work and counseling support. That could be good, Malik said, appearing behind her. He was dressed for school, backpack slung over one shoulder. You're great at helping people get back on their feet. Ava smiled, touching her son's hand. When did you get so wise? Learn from the best. He squeezed her shoulder before heading to the door. Love you, Mum. After Malik left, Ava called the shelter. The director, Martha, remembered her from church and offered her the position immediately. We've been praying for someone with your heart, Martha said warmly. By afternoon, Ava was organizing files at the shelter, learning the stories of women who'd fled abuse, poverty, and despair. Their courage humbled her. During a break, she helped a young mother calm her crying baby, the simple act of rocking and humming bringing peace to them both. You have a gift, Martha observed, watching from the doorway. Ava shook her head. Just trying to share what God's given me. Miles across town, in a sleek, high-rise office, Daniel Cross stared unseeing at financial reports on his computer screen. The numbers blurred together, his mind wandering to conversations shared over vending machine coffee and quiet lunch breaks. His eyes drifted to the silver frame on his desk, a photo of Sarah, his late wife, laughing at something beyond the camera's view. Her eyes sparkled with the same kindness he'd seen in Ava's. What would you tell me to do? He whispered to the photograph. Sarah had always been his moral compass, unafraid to challenge him when success threatened to harden his heart. A gentle knock interrupted his thoughts. His assistant's voice came through the intercom. Sir, there's a young man here to see you. Says his name is Malik Johnson. Daniel sat up straighter. Send him in. Malik entered, looking both determined and nervous in his school uniform. His backpack was still on his shoulders, suggesting he'd come straight from class. Mr. Cross, he said formally, standing tall despite his obvious uncertainty. Daniel gestured to a chair. Please, sit down, and call me Daniel. Malik settled into the leather chair, glancing around the expansive office with its floor-to-ceiling windows and modern art. Nice view, he commented quietly. How did you find me? Daniel asked gently. Your email's on the corporate website, Malik explained. I wrote to your assistant. Told her it was important. Daniel nodded, waiting for the boy to continue. I wanted... Malik paused, gathering his thoughts. I wanted to thank you for what you did for my mom that day. Nobody ever stood up for her like that before. The simple honesty in those words made Daniel's throat tight. Your mother deserved better than what happened to her. Yeah. Malik's fingers twisted in his lap. She's different now, you know? Even with everything that happened after. The rumors and stuff. She's stronger. Like she finally sees what she's worth. Daniel leaned forward, elbows on his desk. How is she doing? She started working at the women's shelter, helping people rebuild their lives. A small smile touched Malik's face. She's good at it, but she misses Bargaintown. Not the job exactly, but the people, the purpose. Malik met Daniel's eyes directly. She misses you too, even though she won't say it. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. She still believes in your goodness," Malik added softly, standing to leave. "Even after that statement thing. She said sometimes good people have to make hard choices." Daniel sat very still, feeling the weight of those words settle into his bones. "Thank you for coming, Malik." The boy nodded, adjusting his backpack. At the door, he turned back. "My dad died when I was 7, but I remember him saying that true strength isn't about power or money. It's about doing what's right, even when it's hard." After Malik left, Daniel sat in the gathering darkness of his office. The city lights began to twinkle outside his window, but he barely noticed them. His eyes were fixed on Sarah's photograph, remembering how she'd challenged him to build Bargain Town on principles, not just profits. He thought about Ava's quiet dignity, her instinctive kindness, her unwavering faith. He remembered her words in the break room that first day. People act ugly when they're hurting. She'd been talking about Todd, but maybe she'd been talking about all of them, himself included. The laptop screen glowed softly, showing the company's latest press release about workplace ethics. The words rang hollow now, corporate jargon masking the simple truth. They'd let fear of public opinion override basic human decency. Daniel reached out and closed the laptop with a gentle click. In the sudden dimness, Sarah's smile seemed to hold a challenge. He knew what he had to do, not as CEO of Bargain Town, but as a man seeking truth. Time to make things right. He whispered to the quiet office, standing up from his desk. Outside, the evening stars were just beginning to appear, bright points of light guiding the way forward. The rain drummed steadily against the windows of Hope Community Center, turning the Saturday morning grey and misty. Daniel Cross sat quietly in the last row of metal folding chairs, his casual clothes and damp baseball cap making him blend in with the small crowd of about 40 people. Most were women from the shelter where Ava now worked, gathered for their monthly support meeting. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and a coffee pot gurgled in the corner where volunteers had set up refreshments. Paper programs crinkled as people shifted in their seats, waiting for the meeting to begin. Daniel's heart beat faster when Ava stepped up to the simple podium. She wore a modest navy dress, her hair pulled back neatly, but it was her presence that drew every eye. Even from the back, he could see her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the microphone. "Good morning," she began softly, her voice wavering. "I'm grateful to be here with you all today." She paused, taking a deep breath, and Daniel found himself holding his own breath, willing strength into her words. "Most of you know me as the new counselor at New Beginnings Women's Shelter, but a few months ago, I was just a store clerk at Bargain Town, trying to make ends meet as a single mom." Her voice grew steadier as she continued. "I thought that's all I'd ever be. Just getting by, staying invisible, doing my best not to make waves." A woman in the front row nodded encouragingly, and Ava's shoulders relaxed slightly. "Then one day everything changed. Not because I did anything special, but because God had other plans." She smiled gently. "You see, when you lose everything you think defines you, that's when God starts defining you himself." Daniel watched as several women dabbed at their eyes with tissues. His own vision blurred unexpectedly. "I lost my husband 8 years ago," Ava continued. "Lost my sense of security, my confidence, my dreams. But God was patient. He kept working on me, teaching me that my worth wasn't in what I owned or what position I held. It was in how I treated others, how I held on to faith even when it seemed foolish." The rain outside seemed to soften, matching the gentle cadence of her voice. Daniel remembered their conversations in the break room, how she'd always found something kind to say about everyone, even Todd, who'd treated her so badly. "When that video went viral, I was terrified," Ava admitted. "Suddenly everyone was watching, judging, making assumptions. Some people called me a hero. Others—" She paused, swallowing hard. "Others tried to turn it into something ugly, but God taught me that other people's opinions don't define us either." In his seat, Daniel felt shame burn in his chest, remembering the corporate statement that had hurt her so deeply. "The truth is, we're all just walking each other home," Ava said, her voice growing stronger. "Rich or poor, famous or unknown, we're all God's children trying to find our way. Sometimes we stumble. Sometimes we let fear guide us instead of faith. But God's grace is bigger than our mistakes." The room was completely silent now, every person leaning forward slightly, drawn in by the quiet power of her words. "So if you're sitting here today feeling broken or lost or afraid," she continued, "remember that God isn't finished with your story. He can use our hardest moments to shape us into something beautiful. I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it in the amazing women in this room." As she concluded her talk, the audience broke into warm applause. Women stood up, hugging each other, wiping tears. Ava stepped down from the podium, immediately surrounded by people wanting to thank her. Daniel waited patiently as the crowd slowly thinned. He watched as Ava spoke to each person individually, offering hugs, listening intently to their stories. Her genuine care for others hadn't changed, despite everything she'd been through. Finally, when the last person had left and volunteers were stacking chairs, he approached her. She was gathering her notes from the podium, her back turned to him. "That was beautiful," he said quietly. Ivor turned, surprise flickering across her face. For a moment, she just looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Daniel," she said finally, "I didn't know you were here." "I didn't want to distract you." He gestured to his casual clothes, tried to be inconspicuous. A small smile touched her lips. "You succeeded, though the baseball cap is becoming a signature disguise for you." The familiar warmth of their friendship stirred in the space between them, despite the weeks of separation. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Please." Ava glanced at the volunteers cleaning up, then nodded. "Let's step outside." They walked to the church entrance, where a wide awning protected them from the lessening rain. The air was fresh and clean, carrying the scent of wet grass and spring flowers. "I'm sorry," Daniel said simply. "That statement, it was wrong. I let fear of public opinion override what I knew was right." Ava leaned against one of the wooden posts supporting the awning. "You were protecting your company. I understood." "No." He shook his head. "I was protecting myself. The company would have been fine. Truth is, I was afraid of my own feelings." She looked at him questioningly. "Not romantic feelings," he clarified quickly, "but friendship, real connection. After Sarah died, I built walls around myself. You and Malik. You reminded me what it meant to care about people as people, not just employees or statistics." "We're all human," Ava said softly, "all trying our best." "Your talk today," Daniel gestured back towards the building. "It reminded me of something Sarah used to say. That true strength isn't in never falling, but in how we help each other back up." Ava's eyes softened. "She sounds like she was very wise." "She was?" Daniel smiled sadly. "Like you, she could see the good in everyone." The rain had softened to a gentle patter, creating a peaceful backdrop to their conversation. A rainbow was forming in the distance, its colors faint but promising. "I miss our talks," Ava admitted. "The work at the shelter is meaningful, but it's not where God meant you to be." Daniel finished gently. She looked at him, surprised. "You sound like my mother now." "Maybe I'm learning." He smiled. "The employee respect program isn't the same without you. The whole store isn't the same." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the rain create patterns on the pavement. We were never really enemies, were we? Ava mused. Just two people trying to do right in a world that's quick to misunderstand. Daniel felt something tight in his chest release. No, we weren't enemies, just human. The rain continued to soften, and patches of blue sky began to show through the clouds. Their friendship, tested but not broken, felt as fresh and clean as the rain-washed morning. Neither felt the need to speak further. Some truths were better felt than said, some bonds stronger for having been tested. They stood together beneath the awning, two souls who had found their way back to understanding, while the last drops of rain fell softly around them. The morning sun streamed through the towering windows of Bargain Town's corporate headquarters, casting long shadows across the polished marble floor. Ava Johnson stood in the vast lobby, her reflection scattered across the mirrored walls. Her Sunday dress, simple but elegant, felt out of place among the designer suits rushing past. A security guard approached with a warm smile. "Ms. Johnson, Mr. Cross is expecting you. Please follow me." The elevator ride to the 40th floor was silent, except for the soft hum of machinery. Ava's hands clasped and unclasped nervously in front of her. When Daniel had called last night asking her to meet him here, his voice had carried an excitement she hadn't heard before. The elevator doors opened to reveal a reception area decorated in muted greys and blues. A young woman in a crisp blazer stood to greet her. "Good morning, Ms. Johnson. I'm Rebecca, Mr. Cross's assistant. He's waiting for you in the conference room." She gestured down a hallway lined with photographs of Bargain Town stores through the decades. Ava followed Rebecca, her sensible shoes quiet against the thick carpet. They passed office after office, each with floor-to-ceiling windows offering breathtaking views of the city below. The conference room door was already open. Daniel stood at the window, hands in his pockets, gazing out at the morning traffic below. He turned at the sound of their approach, his face lighting up with a genuine smile. "Ava, thank you for coming." He crossed the room to shake her hand. "Rebecca, could you hold my calls for the next hour?" Once they were alone, Daniel pulled out a chair for Ava at the large mahogany table. "Would you like some coffee? Water?" "Water would be nice, thank you." Her voice was steady despite her nerves. As Daniel poured water from a crystal pitcher, Ava noticed several folders arranged neatly on the table. Each bore the Bargain Town logo and what appeared to be her name. "I imagine you're wondering why I asked you here," Daniel said, settling into the chair beside her, rather than at the head of the table. "The thought crossed my mind," Ava admitted with a small smile. Daniel reached for one of the folders and opened it carefully. "What happened to you at our store? It opened my eyes to something bigger, something that's been missing not just in our company, but in the retail industry as a whole." He turned to face her directly. "Your story touched people, Ava. Not just because of what happened, but because of how you handled it. Your dignity, your grace under pressure, your forgiveness. These aren't just admirable qualities. They're teachable moments." Ava felt her cheeks warm at his words. "I just did what I thought was right." "Exactly." Daniel's eyes lit up. "And that's why I want to propose something to you." He slid the open folder toward her. "I'd like to introduce the Ava Project." Her eyes widened as she looked down at the documents before her. The proposal was professionally bound, with her name prominently displayed on the cover. "The Ava Project," she echoed softly. Daniel nodded, his enthusiasm evident in his voice. "A new company initiative that would provide mentorship programs and scholarships for women who faced workplace discrimination or personal hardship. Women who, like you, deserve a chance to rise above their circumstances." Ava's fingers traced the words on the page. The proposal detailed a comprehensive program: educational grants, professional development workshops, one-on-one mentoring opportunities. "The budget," she whispered, seeing the numbers. $5 million for the first year. Daniel confirmed, with plans to expand based on success metrics. Ava's head spun. The amount was more money than she'd ever imagined handling. "This is incredible, Daniel. Truly. But why are you showing this to me?" His expression grew serious. "Because I want you to lead it." The water glass nearly slipped from her fingers. "Me? But I don't have the qualifications for something like this." Daniel's smile was gentle but firm. "You've already lived it, Ava. You've walked the path these women will be walking. Who better to guide them?" She shook her head, overwhelmed. "I don't have a college degree. I've never managed anything bigger than a store shift. I wouldn't know where to start." "You'll have a full team supporting you," Daniel assured her. "HR professionals, education specialists, career counselors. But what they can't provide, what only you can bring, is the heart of this project. The understanding of what it truly means to rise above adversity with grace." Tears began to fill Ava's eyes. She blinked them back, trying to maintain her composure. It's too much." "It's exactly enough," Daniel countered softly. "Remember what you said in your speech? About God using our hardest moments to shape us into something beautiful?" Ava nodded, unable to speak. Maybe this is what all of it was leading to. Not just your moment of trial, but your years of faithful service, your wisdom, your compassion. Daniel leaned forward. "Would you be willing to pray about it with me?" The request surprised her, though it shouldn't have. She'd seen his faith growing over these past weeks, watched him struggle with his own questions of purpose and redemption. "Yes," she whispered. "I'd like that." They bowed their heads there in the quiet conference room, 40 stories above the bustling city. Daniel's prayer was simple but heartfelt, asking for guidance and clarity. When they finished, Ava opened her eyes to find a pen being placed gently in her hand. The contract lay before her, waiting for her signature. "You don't have to decide right now," Daniel said. "Take time to think about it." But Ava knew. In her heart, in her spirit, she knew this was right. This was purpose being born from pain, hope rising from humiliation. Her hand was steady as she signed her name on the dotted line. Each letter felt like a step into a new chapter, not just for her, but for all the women who would follow. Daniel watched her complete her signature, his own eyes bright with unshed tears. They sat together in the morning sunlight, hope warming them both like a blessing. The autumn sun cast long shadows through Bargaintown's windows as Ava Johnson stood in her old familiar store, but everything felt different now. 3 weeks had passed since she'd signed the papers launching the Ava project, and those weeks had been a whirlwind of activity that still made her head spin when she thought about it too long. She smoothed her navy blazer, a gift from the company's wardrobe department for her television appearances, and watched customers moving through the aisles. The store looked brighter somehow, more alive. Maybe it was the new lighting Daniel had ordered installed, or maybe it was just her changed perspective. "Mom, come look at this!" Malik called from the break room doorway, his teenage enthusiasm breaking through his usual cool demeanor. "They've got the new posters up." Ava followed her son into the break room, where fresh posters adorned the walls. In clean, bold letters against a peaceful blue background, they read, "Respect is the foundation of service." Her eyes grew misty as she took in the simple yet powerful message. "Your words, Mrs. Johnson," said Sarah, one of her former co-workers, entering the break room with a warm smile. From your first television interview. They're putting these up in every store nationwide." Ava touched the poster gently. You never thought your words would matter this much?" Malik finished for her, grinning. "Well, they do. And wait until you see what I've done with the Foundation's website. It's almost ready to launch." Pride swelled in Ava's heart as she watched her son pull up the beta version on his tablet. At 15, Malik had already shown remarkable talent with web design, and Daniel had immediately approved his involvement in creating the Foundation's online presence. The website was beautiful in its simplicity, clean lines, warm colors, and most importantly, easy navigation for women seeking help. Malik had insisted on making it mobile-friendly, explaining that many women might only have phone access. "See." He scrolled through the different sections. Application forms for scholarships, mentorship matching, success stories, though we'll need to fill those in as they happen. And here's the emergency resources section. Ava squeezed his shoulder. "It's perfect, baby. You've done such amazing work." Their moment was interrupted by Ava's phone buzzing. Another interview request, this time from a major morning show in New York. The past week had been full of them, but these were different from the first round of media attention. Now, reporters wanted to discuss the Ava project, focusing on hope and change rather than scandal and controversy. Just yesterday, she'd sat across from a kind-faced talk show host who'd asked her about the Foundation's mission. "We're not just offering financial help," Ava had explained, surprised by how steady her voice had become in these situations. "We're creating a community of support. Every woman who receives assistance agrees to mentor someone else in the future. It's about building each other up." The response had been overwhelming. Within hours, the Foundation's temporary email address had received hundreds of messages from women wanting to help or seeking assistance. As she stood in the break room now, another memory surfaced, one that had arrived in her mailbox 3 days ago. A cream-colored envelope with familiar handwriting, Todd Grayson's. She'd taken the letter into her bedroom, needing privacy to read it. His words had been raw, honest. "Dear Ava, I've started and torn up this letter a dozen times. Nothing I can say will excuse my behavior that day or during all the days before it. My arrogance and insecurity poisoned everything around me, and you bore the worst of it. I've been in counseling, trying to understand why I became the kind of person who would hurt others to feel powerful. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know how deeply sorry I am." The letter had gone on, describing his journey of self-reflection, his shame watching the viral video, his gratitude that his actions had led to positive change, even though he'd never intended that. Ava had sat with the letter for a full day, praying about her response. Finally, she'd written back just one simple sentence. "I already forgave you the moment it happened." She'd meant it. The freedom in those words had been as much for her as for him. "Mom?" Malik's voice brought her back to the present. "You okay? You looked far away for a minute there." "I'm fine, baby. Just thinking about how much has changed." She smiled at him. "Remember that first night when Daniel drove us home?" Malik nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I thought he was just some rich guy trying to look good for the cameras, but he really meant it, didn't he? About wanting to make things better?" "He did." Ava agreed. Sometimes God sends help in unexpected packages. Sarah, who'd been restocking the break room supplies, spoke up. "The whole company feels different now, Mrs. Johnson. We have these morning meetings where we actually talk about how we're feeling. There's a new anonymous reporting system for any problems, and—" She hesitated, then continued. "Some of us wanted to apologize for not speaking up that day, for letting fear keep us quiet." Ava reached out and squeezed the younger woman's hand. "Fear is a powerful thing, but so is courage, and it grows stronger every time we choose it. Her phone buzzed again, Daniel this time checking if she was ready for tomorrow's foundation board meeting. They'd assembled a diverse group of advisors, business leaders, social workers, civil rights attorneys, and women who'd overcome workplace discrimination themselves. Just got the final numbers from HR. His text read, "Over 1,000 applications in the first week. We're going to need to expand faster than we planned." Ivor showed the message to Malik, who immediately opened his tablet again. "We can add a volunteer registration page," he said, fingers flying over the screen. "Set up local chapters, maybe? Like a network of support groups? Write that down for tomorrow's meeting," Ivor told him, marveling at how naturally he'd stepped into this new world with her. As they prepared to leave the store, several customers recognized her from the television appearances. Their reactions were different now, less about sensation and scandal, more about genuine appreciation and hope. One elderly woman pressed her hand and whispered, "Thank you for showing us how to stand up with grace." In the car, a modest but new hybrid that Daniel had insisted was a business expense, Malik was quiet for a while before speaking. "You know what's cool, Mom? All those times you told me that being kind isn't being weak, you proved it. To everybody." Ava felt tears prick her eyes. "We proved it together, baby. You never once doubted me." "Because I saw you living it every day," he said simply. "Even when things were really hard after Dad died, you never got bitter." The mention of his father sent a warm ache through her heart. "Your daddy would be so proud of you, Malik. Especially all this computer work you're doing for the foundation." "Think so?" His voice held that teenage mix of hope and uncertainty. "I know so. He always said you had a mind for solving puzzles. And that's what you're doing, helping solve the puzzle of how to reach people who need help." They pulled into their apartment complex, the same one they'd lived in before everything changed. Daniel had offered to help them move somewhere more suitable, but Ava had declined. This was home, and staying grounded felt important. Besides, the rental office had finally fixed the air conditioning properly, and Mrs. Martinez downstairs had started a community garden in the courtyard. Small changes, but good ones. Inside, Ava found herself drawn to the living room window, the same one she'd looked out of that first night when the news vans had gathered. The parking lot was quiet now, just neighbors returning from work or heading out for evening errands. Her phone buzzed one more time, a message from a number she didn't recognize. "Saw you on TV. 20 years ago I quit my job because of harassment. Wish I'd had someone like you to show me another way. Thank you." Malik, reading over her shoulder, said softly, "That's why we're doing this, right?" "That's exactly why." Ivor agreed, saving the message. She'd add it to the growing collection of testimonials for the website, another thread in the tapestry of change they were weaving. Looking around their small but tidy apartment, at her son's proud smile, at the foundation documents spread across their kitchen table, Ava felt a deep sense of peace. Not everything had changed. She was still the same person who believed in kindness, who started each day with prayer, who found joy in simple things. But now she had a platform to share those values, to help others find their voice and their courage. The Ava Project wasn't just about her story anymore. It was about all the stories yet to be told, all the lives yet to be transformed. She touched the poster Malik had brought home, the one that would soon hang in break rooms across the country. Respect is the foundation of service. Simple words, but powerful ones. Just like the quiet strength she'd carried all along, now blooming into something greater than she'd ever imagined. The Grand Palmetto Hotel's ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and elegant table settings. Ava Johnson stood before her bedroom mirror, smoothing the deep purple dress Grace had helped her choose. Her hands trembled slightly as she fastened her mother's pearl earrings. "Mom, we're going to be late," Malik called from the living room. He looked handsome in his first real suit, a gift from Daniel that had arrived that morning with a note saying, "Every young man needs one good suit." The drive to the hotel felt surreal. Valets opened their doors, and photographers' flashbulbs lit up the entrance. Malik offered his arm to his mother with playful formality, making her laugh despite her nerves. Inside, the ballroom hummed with conversation. Over 500 people filled the space, corporate executives, community leaders, and foundation supporters from across the country. Crystal glasses clinked, and soft jazz played from a live quartet in the corner. "Mrs. Johnson." A young server approached with a warm smile. "I saw your interview last week. My sister just got her first grant from the Foundation for Nursing School." Before Ava could respond, Daniel Cross appeared at her elbow, looking distinguished in a classic black tuxedo. "I hope you don't mind," he said quietly. "But there are quite a few success stories like that here tonight." Ava's eyes widened as she looked around the room more carefully. Mixed among the business suits and evening gowns were women of all ages and backgrounds, foundation recipients and their families, each with their own story of transformation. "You planned this," she whispered to Daniel. He smiled. "Tonight isn't about corporate philanthropy. It's about real lives changing." As they made their way to their table, Malik spotted the technology set up near the podium. "They're live-streaming the event," he explained proudly. "I helped set up the feed. People from all 50 states will be watching." Ava's stomach fluttered, but she felt God's peace settling over her. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about something much bigger. After dinner, Daniel approached the podium. The room fell silent as he began to speak. "6 months ago, I witnessed something that changed my perspective forever. I saw dignity in the face of cruelty. I saw strength in gentleness. I saw Christ-like forgiveness in action." He paused, his voice softening. "I saw Ava Johnson." The audience applauded as Daniel continued, describing how that moment had sparked a movement. He shared statistics. Over 1,000 women helped already, 15 new corporate partners, programs launching in 3 countries. "But numbers don't tell the real story," he said. "Lives tell the story, and there's no one better to share that truth than the woman who inspired it all. Please welcome Ava Johnson." The applause thundered as Ava rose. Camera flashes sparkled like stars. But unlike those first overwhelming days of publicity, she felt only peace. Malik squeezed her hand as she passed. At the podium, Ava took a deep breath and began speaking from her heart. "6 months ago, I prayed for strength to get through one more difficult day. God answered that prayer in ways I never could have imagined." She spoke about dignity, how it can't be taken away unless you surrender it, about forgiveness, how it frees both the forgiver and the forgiven, about God's mysterious ways, how humiliation can become elevation, how pain can birth purpose. "Every person in this room has value," she said, her voice strong and clear. "Every soul deserves respect, not because of their job title or bank account, but because they carry the image of God." As she finished speaking, Daniel returned to the podium, carrying something covered with a velvet cloth. "Ava," he said, "you've taught us all something precious about grace and dignity. This plaque will hang in every Bargaintown break room and every foundation office." He unveiled it with flourish. In elegant bronze letters it read, "In honor of Ava Johnson, whose grace reminded us that every soul deserves respect." The audience rose as one, applauding. Sound rolled through the ballroom like thunder, continuing for nearly a minute. Ava's hands shook as she touched the plaque, tears sliding down her cheeks. But these weren't tears of shame or fear. They were tears of gratitude and wonder. In that moment, looking out at the standing crowd, Seeing Malik's proud face, feeling Daniel's respectful support, Ava realized something profound. She had become the woman she once doubted she could be, not because she had changed who she was, but because she had finally embraced the strength that had been there all along. The applause continued, washing over her like a blessing, affirming what God had known all along, that sometimes the quietest voice carries the most powerful truth. 3 weeks after the gala, autumn painted Somerville in gentle golds and reds. The morning air carried a crisp sweetness that reminded Ava of new beginnings. She sat at her desk in the Foundation's modest office, reviewing applications from women seeking educational grants. Each story touched her heart. Single mothers, abuse survivors, women who refused to let circumstances define them. Her phone buzzed with a text from Malik. "Don't forget, store visit at 2 o'clock. Ava smiled. The remodeled Bargain Town was hosting a small ceremony to celebrate its transformation, and she had promised to attend. Part of her still felt strange about returning, but God had taught her that healing often happened in the very places where wounds were first received. At 1:45, she gathered her things and drove the familiar route. The parking lot looked different now, freshly paved, with carefully tended flower beds adding splashes of color. The automatic doors slid open with a soft whoosh, and the scent of new carpeting greeted her. "Mrs. Johnson!" Several employees called out warmly as she entered. A young cashier rushed over to hug her. "The training program you designed has changed everything here. We're like a family now." Ava squeezed her hand, remembering her own days behind that same register. "That's exactly what we hoped for, sweetie." She walked the aisles slowly, taking in the changes. The harsh fluorescent lights had been replaced with softer, more natural lighting. The layout was more spacious, designed to reduce stress during busy times. But the biggest change wasn't physical, it was in the atmosphere. Employees chatted easily with customers, their faces relaxed and genuine. Near the back of the store, Ava paused. The bathroom corridor where Todd had grabbed her arm that fateful day looked different now. The walls were a warm ivory color, and positioned right beside the door was something that made her breath catch. A small bronze plaque gleamed in the afternoon light. She stepped closer, running her fingers over the raised letters. "Every soul deserves respect." The staff insisted on it. A familiar voice said behind her, "They paid for it themselves." Ava turned to find Daniel standing there, his eyes warm with understanding. He was dressed casually in jeans and a button-down shirt, looking more like a friend than a CEO. "It's perfect," she whispered, touching the plaque again. Not to memorialize the hurt, but to remind us of the healing. "Mom!" Malik's voice echoed down the aisle. He jogged toward them, his camera hanging around his neck. At 15, he was growing taller every day, but his smile still held that same sweet innocence. "This lighting is amazing. Stand together. I want to capture this moment." Daniel stepped beside Ava, maintaining a respectful distance. Sunlight streamed through the newly installed skylights, casting a warm glow around them. Malik adjusted his camera settings, then looked up with a grin. "Perfect. Now smile." The camera clicked several times as they stood there, the bronze plaque gleaming behind them. Ava felt a profound sense of peace wash over her. This place that had once seen her lowest moment now stood as a testament to God's faithfulness. "Want to see?" Malik showed them the photos on his camera screen. Ava caught her breath. The woman in the image looked strong, serene, her eyes bright with quiet joy. Beside her, Daniel's expression showed genuine respect and friendship. "You should frame this one," Daniel suggested. It captures the spirit of everything we've been working toward. As they walked toward the front of the store, Ava noticed small changes everywhere. The break room had been transformed into a comfortable lounge with inspirational quotes on the walls. The customer service desk displayed the foundation's literature prominently. Even the name tags employees wore now included the phrase, "serving with dignity." Standing near the exit, Ava felt overwhelmed by God's goodness. "You know," she said softly, "someone told me once that God never wastes a wound. I didn't understand it then, but I do now." Daniel nodded. "Your wound became wisdom. Your pain became purpose. And His grace became glory," Ava added, smiling. She pushed open the glass doors, stepping into the autumn sunshine. The shy clerk who had once dreaded coming to work was gone. In her place stood a woman transformed, not by fame or success, but by the quiet strength that comes from knowing whose you are. Malik and Daniel followed her out, chatting about the Foundation's latest projects. But Ava paused for a moment, looking back at the store. The bronze plaque might have been mounted by the bathroom, but its message had spread far beyond those walls. Every soul deserves respect, not because of what they do or don't do, but because of whose image they bear. The autumn breeze lifted her hair gently, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and fresh possibilities. Ava smiled, radiant with the kind of quiet strength that comes only through redemption. She had learned that sometimes God's greatest gifts come wrapped in life's deepest hurts. And in His hands, nothing, not even humiliation, is ever wasted. Thank you for being here. If something in this story stayed with you, I'd love to see you again. Subscribe, and tomorrow I'll bring you another story crafted with heart.